Welcome to The Wind Down. I'm Angela Ceberano. In this podcast, we talk with interesting and inspiring women and men on how they succeed and survive in this hectic world of life and business. I'm fascinated by how highly successful people unwind and recharge. In a world that is constantly switched on and always connected, how does one go about rest and respite? Is hustle, grind, and an always-on mindset a thing of the past? Is rest and self-care a crucial ingredient to success? Or can we only learn to rest once we've reached a certain level of success? And if so, at what cost? Join the conversation as we discover and share stories of work, passion, and freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Marco & Co., a luxury candle and wellness company that truly understands the value of rest, self-care, and winding down. This is The Wind Down. Jen Fontaine.
Angela Ceberano.
I'm so excited to have you at Flourish HQ.
It's crazy.
I know, it's crazy. I'm so excited that we've been able to actually make time to sit down and have a chat because...
We never do. We're normally hustling for other people.
I know. We're running businesses and hustling, and it's very strange for both of us to actually be in front of the microphone instead of behind it.
Indeed.
So today is so exciting, and I'm just so blessed that you're here to have a chat because... When I first thought about starting a podcast, you were actually top of my list to have a chat with.
I'm very humbled by that.
Well, it's just that I've been very inspired by you over the years, and we come from a very similar background. Mm-hmm. Publicity, working at record companies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the thing that I've always been so inspired by you is how you seem to manage it all, and your dedication to your career, but also your dedication to be a mum as well. Mm-hmm. And you do things so fiercely, but also in such a kind way. Like you're so passionate and you care so much about the work that you do. So thank you for making the time.
Of course.
I'm so grateful for the time. So the first thing that we do on this podcast, the very first thing that we do, we'll talk about a career and we'll get into that. But the first thing I want to have a chat and ask you, what is the thing that you do to unwind? Because the podcast is called The Wind Down. What do you do like on a daily or a weekly basis to kind of wind down or just de-stress from our very hectic, crazy life?
Wind down is an interesting thing because when I first started my own business, separate from leaving corporations, I found it really difficult because there was always two Jens. There was work Jen and then to a lesser degree, the private Jen. And one resolution I made to myself, which is still a work in progress, I just want you to know that I don't believe in perfect. Yes. And I don't believe that things are always together. Yeah. You just have better days than some other ones that you try and remember or learn from. But perfect for me is something I struggle with, and that's unusual to hear from me because if people ask or refer to me, they tend to say that I'm potentially OCD or potentially have a high, I guess you could say, standard.
Yes. Standard
is high, but for me, my biggest objective these days is to be consistent and be consistently one person, because professional Jen used to dominate a lot and the personal Jen used to not have a lot left in the tank to cope with life and other things. Yes. So I learned that I had to become honest Jen. Right. And the honest person and the way I exist is just by acknowledging that some things and some days and some jobs are better served on certain days. So I approach my day in a really difficult way to maintain other than for me, because I don't want to say that my way is the right way. Yeah. But for me, I've learnt that I'm very mindful when I wake up. I have an intent. What's my intention today? And the list is always with probably over 50 things to do, but I work with my top 5. Yeah. And I always try and make sure I go to bed before at least finishing those. Yeah. But my biggest start for the day is 8 minutes to me. I don't know why I got 8 minutes. It could be 10, should have been 15, but I do 8. And that 8 means no phones, no emails. And normally it means I go to a kettle and I turn on and I have a green tea with jasmine. And I sit there and I give myself an objective. Yep. And my objective can be professional or it could be personal. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And
See, even as you're talking, I'm like, Jen, you are me. Well, I am you.
So I try and be really mindful, and I know that's, you know, a bandied term now, and you know, I'm someone that bought mindful colouring in pencils and the books. I actually have never touched it.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't bring myself to buy a pack of 12 coloured pencils. I
You
had to go back to the art shop.
Yeah.
And so that really traumatised me, and I couldn't do it.
Yes.
And so that mindful book never got touched. So I had to keep it simple for me.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because our life is quite busy and quite hectic. And you live sort of between, well, you live in LA full time.
I do.
But you are travelling a lot, whether it's going to Europe or coming back to Australia. So to have those 8 minutes just for yourself that's awesome. I love that. I've only just recently started doing that myself, where I was, you know, will write in my gratitude journal every morning, and I have to light a candle, I have to have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And just, it sets that intention for the day. And
It does.
so important.
It does.
Because it's rare in the day to have, you'll know this very, very well, more so than me even, it's rare to have 8 minutes in a day just to yourself.
It is. It's very rare. And I have, you know, I've had some big changes in my personal life, which I'm happy to open up about. And, you know, I just recently, after 20 years, decided to separate from my husband, and we're you know, getting a
Really?
divorce. And, you know, that's a big change in someone's life, and both our lives. You know, we're incredibly loyal to each other. There wasn't a horrible story. It'd probably be easier if you could say the dishpans flew and there was a
Yes.
finger pointing moment, but we both agreed that we were both incredibly lonely in our marriage, and so to make a future way and be positive and be better parents, we had to make a change, and we had to look within. And so when you make those changes, you have to be really clear of thought and mind, because the impact and responsibility to yourself, to your child that you have in common, and then to your ex, you know, it's a big decision. So that's why I adopted, you know, most recently over these last 2 years, a much more disciplined approach to my life, because it makes me a better operator, it makes me a better human being, a better woman, but it also made me a better professional. I feel I'm better these days than what I've ever achieved before.
Yeah.
And it's come from lateral thinking and living a really, really truthful existence. And so those 8 minutes now are dedicated now to me, firstly, because I have to be better at being the person I need to be.
Yeah.
And then I dedicate that to our son, who lives with me full time, and how can I improve his ability to cope with life.
Yeah.
And then we have dogs.
Yes.
And then I have these beautiful clients that, you know, they are the extra family, because your clients become your family.
Yeah, you spend so much time with them.
You do.
Yeah, it's
do.
it's incredible. You speak about kind of in the past there was two different types of Jen, and I can really relate to that a lot. And I think maybe let's have a chat about it, but I feel like maybe we both come from a publicity background.
We do.
I was looking at your LinkedIn profile actually, because it's really hard to find
It's
any
terribly not information
on you
yeah,
online.
It's not.
And so you were actually national publicity manager at Sony Music, and that I had that same role as well, like a few years after you. And then you're at Warner Music, and that celebrity PR or publicity role, I think we're trained in a certain way that, for me, there was definitely multiple personalities. Like Phil and I speak about it all the time, that, you know, which Ange am I going to get today, you know, because we're constantly living in the future. Or for me, I always felt like I'm living in the future. I need to predict, you know, if my client is going to say A, B or C, then I need to be prepared for that.
Of course.
And I feel like, that split personality was, it was difficult to maintain, because, you know, like you get home and you've just been like you've been wearing so many multiple hats, and then you get home and you're trying to be a good wife or a good listener, and you've just got nothing left in the tank. And I feel like really honing in on who I am and what I'm doing, and being a little bit more spiritual, like in the last kind of year or so, has really helped, you know, kind of be more level and more honest. I think honesty was that key word that you kind of said.
100%. I mean, look, I am so grateful. never intended to necessarily remain in entertainment. But a good friend of mine had suggested that there was a casual position at a record label, which was Sony Music. And, I was 19 into a size of jeans that I don't wear anymore. But it was, as I likened to, it was such a good opportunity.
Yeah.
First of all, it was an opportunity that I really recognised and I valued from the beginning. And when I worked at Sony, I considered that my military service.
The best training ground you'll ever have.
The best systems, incredible artists, particularly Australian. I've always been very loyal and love the Australian industry. But then, of course, the ability to adjust against some incredible pop artists, rock, and you're right, you adjust to the genre at the time, the genre of music. There's always a new wave, whether it was pop or whether it was, acoustic rock, whatever that genre was, you had to be very malleable. And also if you're talking to, Fox FM or Triple M here or Triple J, it was a different environment and different types of TV shows. But working and being, and Sony, some of my greatest relationships still remain at that label to this day. And then when I went to Warner Music, it was the only other choice because I had all these personal favourite artists that I worked with. But working in a for me, starting as a publicist, working for a major international company, just gave me a foundation.
The best foundation you could ever have.
Someone said to me, when I walked in there, and Phil would attest to this, there were so many acronyms that I had no idea. I thought, what on earth is this environment? I had Post-it notes and a notebook because it was like learning another language.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, and then to understand around when a live show was kicked in. And some of our production managers that I still engage with, and who I respect so much, with some of my management clients now, they're the same ones that were like, look, Jen, a DI, it's called a direct input. And there were lots of learnings. But some of my greatest friends are roadies. You have to understand in this industry, no one's better than the other person because you're a spoke in the wheel. Yeah. And that wheel only turns when everyone turns together in synergy. Yeah. And so I just learnt so much, and I was so hungry. I just couldn't believe my luck. I thought I'd lucked out. And that luck turned into my whole life.
And that's why I think I relate and look up to you so much as well, because I feel exactly the same way. When I worked at Sony, and I started when I was really young, I actually started at BMG and then moved over to Sony, and it was just the best training ground that anyone could ever have. You're working with the biggest and the best, and I really learnt publicity there, and I'll always be so grateful for that whole kind of time in my life.
Yes, but it's true. It's truthfully, there is in this industry, particularly entertainment, people can come in with the wrong intention. The only stars that are out there are the creatives, the people that write the songs, that stand up on a stage and give their all. That's the most exposing time for an artist, to write a song and hope someone appreciates it, but you potentially opening yourself up for criticism. So I always felt that I was just a conduit for that. I love it. I don't have the skill base to sing, but I just appreciated it and loved it as an art form. And so I feel, even to this day, I'm literally I'm a pathway giver. I open a pathway for art to stand up, and it should be commercial and it should be embraced as a business. And so when you work around that all the time, the minute you think you know everything, you know nothing at all. And that's the way it is. I still learn every day. I learn from someone that's going to impart something else. And so I still make notes. I still prepare for a meeting and think, what are my outcomes? What am I trying to achieve by this? In order to help get a result. And, you have to be willing to learn. And the other one for me is all about relationships. I've known you for so many years, and we've had to have robust conversations on behalf of each other for different reasons. And, and obviously Phil and lots of different artists, sometimes my biggest line is if we don't agree with or think and have to or can't find a solution would be, let's all sleep on it and come back tomorrow. And so I feel that in this business, maybe in the last 10 years, the real business has been even put in further. Perhaps that's changed because of the digital age. We've all had to find a reason and a way for music and the entertainment world to kind of connect again. And not to be afraid of commercialism. Because there's something particularly about Aussies. It's like, I didn't set about for this to be success. I'm like, hogwash. Everyone wants success.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's still art. So I
Yeah.
understand there's sensitivities around it.
Yeah, it's so true. There's so many points in there that you've mentioned. I mean, some people get into the industry for not quite the right reasons because it does look so glamorous.
It does.
And
it is at times.
it can
One day
be.
out of the other 364.
100%. 100%. It's a full-on gig. It's 24/7,
Yeah.
non-stop. You're up super early, 4 a.m. some mornings, you know, to take whatever talent that you have and doing
Especially
the
for a
rounds.
publicist too, because you know
Hard
there's
yakka.
setup before, there's the
Yes.
execution, and then there's the actual follow-up.
That's
and
right.
the follow-up's the missing link. The reason between, and I know you have a lot of early PR students that look to you, towards
Yes.
you, and I'd say that it's about the follow-through. That's the really big defining part of publicity,
Yeah.
and the relationships. A good publicist can actually pitch the story with that angle,
Yep.
and that's the big difference
Yeah.
around making sure a story and the right purpose is being told for your client.
That's right. And so what made you jump? Because you are one of the best in the world publicists that I know. 100%. There's
Don't know
you
about
and no, absolutely, Jen. It's you and Meredith Plant are the two people that I always think if I'm stuck, you know, within a gig or, you know, I'm writing something or I'm trying to create a strategy. And if I just get stuck, I always say, what would Jen do or what would Meredith do?
Well, I don't think the publicist ever leaves you. So
Yeah,
the
it's
thing
always
is
in you.
I've diversified perhaps. Some of it was by accident, to be honest.
Really?
But I do believe that a story is always the reason behind an opportunity.
Yeah.
And in publicity, you're told no a lot.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I used to mentor a lot of my team and even to myself, and I teach myself that no stands for new opportunity.
Yeah.
And it really
Love
does.
That. No stands for new opportunity.
It does.
That's great.
So for me, I had a first break. Damien Leith rang me and asked me if I'd start to manage him, which I was really honoured in one of my first clients to do. Human Nature also after a long-standing manager who did a really amazing job, and you know, because nothing's forever, but it is down to relationships. And I was really honoured to be asked by the boys, who obviously I have a nearly 25-year history with. I was their publicist.
At Sony,
at
were
Sony
you?
back in the day.
Wow.
I also consulted to some major corporations and had to talk to them about infrastructure and melding of sport and entertainment, which there's always such a connection between, think about the greatest football matches, there's always music entertainment and all of those opportunities. And now I have, and I worked obviously with Delta, and now I'm really honoured to be working and managing Guy and his wife Jules. But management came via default because I think it's very hard for me to say, but I think in the end, people loved the fact that I was considerate of all the things that were going on in their careers. And so I just started to really watch what in the early days, which is what it's all about now, is branding. But, being mindful, what purpose would this serve the client? Where would that position them? What could be, a synergy where we could start to talk to corporations about a third party?
Yeah.
And it just started to grow, because I think the job of a publicist is a lot deeper than just a phone or interview or a face-to-face. And yes, of course, there's very powerful digital exposure now, or a great 60 Minutes or Sunday Night, or a great story. And I love a good yarn. I think that's what human beings like to hear about each other, is their story. It's like today.
Absolutely. But you've always been, and it's something that I aspire to as well, and what I'm trying to do at Flourish too, it's like you're very business savvy, and that you think very strategically. And whilst you have kind of that, from where I sit and what I think, you have the core of, that publicist that will never, ever, ever give
It'll
up.
never leave me.
It will never leave you. Once you've been a publicist, you'll carry that through.
Love a day sheet.
Absolutely. Oh, I love a run sheet. But yeah, you're very business savvy, and you think with a very strategic mind, and you are great at putting together a master plan. But what I'm so impressed at that you continue to be throughout your career, and from watching from afar, is that your attention to detail. Like, yes, you can do the big master plan and the big strategies and the business plan and the business operations, but your day-to-day, like, schedules is still impeccable. Like, do you think that's something that people can learn, like attention to detail, or do you think it's just in you?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
I meet really creative people, or people that can perhaps be a little bit more relaxed. I love a laugh. I've got to tell you that right now. I laugh wholeheartedly. Never ideally at someone else's expense, but I like to see that life is funny.
Yeah.
And it's a nicer resolve to laugh, and sometimes I laugh cry.
Yeah.
But when it goes to my attention to detail, and I look at other people that can be, really relaxed, it's like, let's just wing it. I'm thinking, I don't know how to wing it. It's just not how I do things.
Yeah.
So I suppose some of it is a natural default of mine, where I do think you have a certain type of way of getting through a day or a work assignment.
Yeah.
But yes, I think also too, if you make yourself aware of what could possibly go wrong or what could be on the horizon without being fearful of it, then as you had said earlier, you have to prepare yourself, and preparation is really key.
Yeah.
So I try and think with purpose around most things I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I feel like a lot of people that I speak to that have worked in entertainment, showbiz, publicity, management as well, the common trait seems to be anxiety. Like, do you ever get anxious or feel, panicky at certain times? Because I know when I worked for a major record company, for that almost 10-year period, I felt like I was living in fight or flight mode.
Yeah. So I'd be a liar to say I don't suffer from anxiety. I do.
Yeah.
That being said, a lot of the anxiety comes through time management.
Yeah.
And perhaps overcommitting, or what I find frustrating is when people don't come prepared for something and you are, but yet you have to spend so much time imparting what really could have been a very communal opportunity.
Yes.
So that can be frustration now rather than stress. But what I find glorious about the artists I manage is that their decision is their final word. So you have to be prepared for flexibility.
Yeah.
But look, I think technology and having too much on everyone's plate can cripple people.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to getting to your top 5 every day, work out what's the most important. It's interesting, we all have times in our lives where there's a lot going on, and so it's difficult to manage the balance.
Yes.
But again, if you can try and find what the real goal is for that end of day and what really has to be done, then a lot of things that you feel or used to feel the pressure about not getting done, some people don't even notice it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So get your results, get the purpose right. And like I said, I really try not to go, and my mum would say, and she said this in something that's happening in our family for the moment, Jen, if the foot falls off the bed, all you have to do is bring it back up, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
Be loving. And I have a mantra, and in the last 2 years it's been stuck on my computer, and which is my laptop, which is always with me. And it starts with be light. Being light's a really interesting one. Because what does that mean? Normally it means be an easier person to be around.
Yeah.
Be light in what your purpose is.
Yeah.
Be kind is really essential. Have empathy. Be strong. It doesn't mean you have to be mean. It doesn't mean you have to be forthright. But be strong in being able to say no if something's not right. Being strong in trying to be being convincing or having conviction. And then being grateful, for sure. Gratitude's one I really try and stick with.
Yeah.
And then one of my dearest mentors, an English friend who has a huge career in LA and a very successful one, she said, for God's sake, have some fun this year, will you, Jen?
Yeah.
And it's true.
It is so true. Sometimes we just forget to have fun. I think I have forgotten to have fun.
Yeah.
I think I turn, what am I? I'm 37. Did I just turn 37? Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Baby.
I keep forgetting how old I am. 37. I just turned 37. But I reached, when I got to 35, I was like, hang on, I'm working 24/7, which is kind of what I signed up for, because that's the industry that we belong to. But I was like, at 35, I was like, something has to change. Like, I need to start having some fun. And that's when I, finally at 35 got a hobby, which is where horse riding came into it, which really saved my soul. Like, it just, oh gosh, that really helped me in so many ways. Do you have hobbies? Like, do you have hobbies that help you kind of switch off and escape kind of the 9 to 5?
So a year ago in September, I started a fitness journey.
You look awesome, by the way. When I saw you today, I was like, Jen is looking fit.
Well, I started, it's through a global fitness guru called Nick Mitchell, and he has a company called Ultimate Performance, which sounds really intense. And one of my friends in entertainment in LA, on her Instagram, she started to do Renee Barge, another Australian, very successful. And I saw her doing this program, and I thought to myself, well, I was always and I have been fit and had personal trainers before, but I decided to sign up on this 12-week program. And one thing that was appealing is, you touched on, I live in LA and I have a business here in Australia. So I wanted to start a program that was able to be built around my global travel, which they do. They have, a gym in Mayfair and LA, Sydney, and all around the world. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I thought, as a typical woman, that I would go in and it was all about my body and shape. Yeah. But in the end, the best result that's happened is my mind. I am so grateful for the lateral thinking that's come in through the result of this workout. And it's discipline, it's dietary, but it's living normally. There's no keto, but it's about macro and responsibility. So it's good eating. I just choose not to drink. It's not because I judge anyone else from that. And I work really hard. I cannot, as you might know, negotiation is part of my job. I cannot negotiate myself out of this hour of workout. I have no control. And I must admit, there's some potty mouth expressions that come. Yep. A lot of eye rolling. But my personal trainer, particularly my one in Sydney, has been extraordinary. And as a result, yes, I guess the body has changed, but it's my mind, then it's my strength, and then third is the body. Wow. But it's helped me immeasurably. So that's a hobby. My number one and only priority, and the reason why I do this, is my son. Yes. Being a mother is probably, the best gift, and something that I now appreciate a lot more because of the struggles I had in trying to have children, which I didn't know was a problem.
At what point did you recognise that? So how old were you? Because is Max, your son Maxwell, 17 now?
He's turning 17 in November.
Oh my gosh.
It's extraordinary.
Wow. Does that just feel like it just went by so quickly?
It does, but it's the weirdest thing because numbers don't lie, so clearly I've gotten older, which I don't really care about. It's the weirdest thing because the empathy, and again I go back to having a laugh, which does not mean I'm a flippant person, but the sense of humour you rediscover when you're a mum. It was always an objective, but I think people have always thought that I've been so obsessed with my career that that's all I ever wanted. And I have some wonderful girlfriends that chose not to be mums, and I respect them more than anything, but they're wonderful human beings and probably more generous in spirit and love than anything else. But for me, I always wanted to be a mum. Yeah. And we lost a baby before our son Maxwell, and then we had our beautiful boy. And I could have had, if I wanted to, and really did. We lost, after Maxwell, 6 children.
Did you?
6 babies at various intervals. Wow. And it was the most challenging time as a person.
Oh, gut-wrenching.
Because for me, I was a working mum in the entertainment industry. It wasn't the done thing once you had your baby to return to a record company. So I went back to work after 3 months.
Did you? And
started touring. I was doing a junket, as we call a media trip in New York. And I bundled our son off to my mum, bless my mum, and everyone. And babies, of course, at that time just need to be fed, bathed and watered, slept in a program. But I, on the other hand, was a crumbled mess in New York, crying myself to sleep, thinking, what on earth have I done to myself? Gosh. And I worked forever after that. And so we tried to have more babies, and we lost 2 more babies, and then I started an IVF program, which never really did I think we needed it, but we tried. And, you know, for working mums out there or women that are going through that, it's really difficult because I knew, being a reasonably slender woman, that I was water cooler conversation for anyone who thought maybe she's trying to have another baby. You know, look at that tummy, or gee, Jen's not drinking, but we have all these events you go to. And the paranoia probably built more as a stereosonic moment in my head than anyone else, because I know most people, when you work these hours, are your friends and they only want the best for you. But I felt really conflicted. Yeah. And I remember we put an in vitro egg back in Maroubra at an IVF clinic, and I rushed in a cab to the SCG to do a Green Day press conference 45 minutes later, which, of course, anyone who knows if they're trying to do in vitro is the worst thing you're meant to be doing. Yeah. I also did a junket flight an hour later and went and did a trip overseas. So maybe a little bit of what I was doing was not listening to the proper instructions on the program. Right. But we lost a few, you know, within, I guess, the 12-week catchment, some at 6 weeks, some at 12s. Some are much later. I remember one New Year's Eve, we knew the baby had passed away, and my mum, beautiful mum, and my husband at the time, we were at Camperdown Hospital having a curette on New Year's Eve, and all the people saying Happy New Year's, and I said to my husband and mum, I can't stand this, I have to leave, get me home right now. Yeah. And I was a crumbling mess. Oh, so gosh. I think it's really important for girls and women to, you know, to talk about that, because there's so much pressure as a working woman to be effective as a partner, to bring an income in, and we're these machines. And that's where I had learnt, now that I'm older, to be a little kinder to myself. But it broke me, because I remember thinking I can make an album a number one, I can get multi-platinum awards for clients, I can look $1 million and feel great, and isn't Jen wonderful? But deep down I was an absolute mess. Yeah. And it took our little boy, who at the time was growing during those various losses, and he, one morning when I was, I guess, having a little bit of a pity party after the loss, but, you know, women should cry and we should express ourselves, he came up to me and said, Mama, am I not enough? Oh. And it woke me up, because I had extra, I guess, hormones, and we were doing steroids and lots of different things to help support these babies. And I've never felt more worse in my life. And to this day, I've never, you know, I don't know if I'll ever recover from that moment when Maxwell said that to me. And it jolted me, though, because I worked out that perfect wasn't good enough, and that I did have this blessed child. Yeah. And there he was asking if he wasn't good enough. And it had to jolt me out of what I thought was, you know, you set these objectives in life and you think you have to get them. But I was so blessed. Yeah. And so, you know, from there we stopped, and I went on Chinese herbs and I cleansed myself. And you know, regretfully, I'm called the baby whisperer. You know, because I love a baby. I'll find a baby in a room and I'll cuddle it. My beautiful goddaughter's just had a baby, and let me tell you, I walked into that baby shower, said, I'm going last. It's a drop the mic scenario. Get all your gifts out of the way, because you're never going to match this. And everyone just went, you're so right. This is just, and in the end it was just like a moment. But I love babies. And ironically, you know, if we have to be honest, you know, my husband and I have closed a chapter, and you know, 4 months ago we let go of the last embryo, and we unfroze it, and it was time to let go of all those hopes and dreams, because you know what, I have a 16 and a half year old young man that is a blessing, that tells me he loves me every day, that is a wonderful expression of the unity we had as partners, and so he's more than enough.
Oh, that's so beautifully put, the way you've just put that. And it's funny, because Phil and I are going through our own journey of trying to become pregnant, and I feel like it is a really important thing to talk about.
It is.
You know, because no one Phil and I had a miscarriage a couple of months ago now, and it was our first miscarriage, and I didn't realise that it was such a common thing. But then, you know, when you speak to your doctors, it's 1 in 4 women go through it. And I think for me, I really have to kind of learn just to let go and let nature take its course. And for me, being such a self-confessed control freak, not being able to control what's actually going on inside me, or I've always, like you're saying, like I've always been able to, you know, create a goal and I'd always get it, you know.
I know, but you will get your dream. I mean, that being said, if someone had said, and they did say to me, it just wasn't meant to be, I was ready to punch them in the head.
Right.
I mean, honest to goodness me, you don't know my story. You don't know the physiology that's going on between myself and my husband. Yeah. And for you, I know when you express that what you had been through, it's a huge loss. And it's an incredible pain. And you're right, it's very, very difficult because it's not in your hands.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do know is that you guys are so committed to each other. And you have to find, you know, a chance for you guys to heal from that first loss. And yes, whatever that guidance is, whether it's, you know, the doctor giving you support or whether it is finding the balance in your life, it will come. Because I do believe in a dream coming true. You should never give up on your dreams.
Never give up. We'll never give up, that's for sure. And it's funny, like the moments when it happens. So like you being in hospital on New Year's Eve and everyone saying, oh, you know, Happy New Year. And you're like, I just need to get out of here.
Oh.
We lost the baby on Mother's Day.
There you go.
And it was just like,
it's bittersweet, isn't it?
Gosh, yeah. We had to just go away, go to the farm and completely disconnect. But at the same time, and you know what this is like, you run a business. The show has to go on. So
it does. I know. I mean, you know, there will be reminders. Mother's Day, you'll never forget. And you know, I lost 2 babies when I was simultaneously pregnant with 2 dear friends. So I see their babies to this day. And some days you have a moment thinking what it could have been.
Yes.
But look, motherhood is this blessed thing. I mean, you know, it's a gift because that expression around a little world that you can sort of be a part of, and you know, I come from a mother that made so many sacrifices for me, that I love the fact that you can just be so giving, you know, and so I think it's made me a better professional.
Has it chilled you out a little bit?
I mean, possibly.
Yeah.
A children's party is so easy to organise. I mean, that's 10 minutes, you know, where you have other girlfriends that could organise that. That takes weeks on end and they need a party planner. Right. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, we got that.
No, we got this one down. You know, you've got a friend, your graphic designer does the invites. It's all done within, you know, within seconds. But look, motherhood's chilled me out. I just go back to it. It's given me a sense of humour. Yeah. It gives me a purpose. I literally am up every day. I think in PR it can be at times smoke and mirrors like you touched on, and so it's a nice thing to just have a natural existence. Yeah, for sure. Pretty amazing.
Now let's talk about LA, because what made you take the big leap from going from Australia? You're living in Sydney, and then you took the whole family and your business to LA. How was that?
It was nearly 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years in February next year. Wow. It was I guess having had, my business at the time 8 years, it'll be 12 years founded this year, I wondered what else was there to achieve. I was really happy. Yeah. Of course, I've now got even incredible clients still, and I'm really honoured by that and humbled. But I just wondered what else was out there. And when I was at record labels, there were tempting conversations about a transfer at the time. And regretfully, I maybe I was too scared. Maybe I wasn't ready. Yeah. But it is the hardest thing I've ever done. Mid-40s, go over, what on earth? Have no credit, knocking on people's doors that you have to prove yourself from day dot again. It was really interesting because your reputation's everything. And obviously, I'm fortunate I did have a reputation around the world. But in Australia, it was 1 or 2 phone calls and the deal would be done.
Yeah.
Versus uprooting my life. And it came about through an incredible group that I manage, Human Nature. They asked me to come and become their worldwide manager and find a new show and help them build a new creative and work in the entertainment mecca. For us, Vegas, maybe Vegas 10 years ago, thanks Celine, it was the place you went to retire. Now it's the place you go. Everyone goes there, and it's not just Elton and Rod of a certain generation. It's every current artist, Justin, Ariana, they're all doing pop-ups. Everyone's doing it. It's such a business. It changed the way I work. Having, and I'll quote Andrew Tierney from Human Nature, in Australia, we're all reared to be humble. And in this industry, for goodness sake, don't be too big for your boots. But in America and in Vegas, given all those bright lights and the way everything's marketed, you have to bark like the loudest dog on the top of the hill and be unashamed about it. But also remember that when you're on that stage, and particularly these guys, your talent can't be hidden.
Yes.
So talent's everything. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
But they make a great show. So it's down to relationships and partnerships. I had to forge them again. I love that part of the business. I'm a relationships person.
You are.
And so, but then again, I do sit back and reflect, particularly after the last 6 months and all the change personally and professionally that I've gone through. I think, I must have been crazy. I don't know why I did it, to be honest. But
you love it now. Would you move back to Australia, or you feel?
I think
pretty
Australia
settled?
is home for me. I spend every 6 to 8 weeks travelling back to Australia. The work and the travel for work, it's not riding the bus, it's the night bus from LA to Sydney. That's not hard. Yes, there's Europe because we've been really successful with Guy in Europe and the UK. The travel isn't the problem. It's probably just the difficulty of being away from my son.
Yes.
Where there's, he was born into this crazy world. He knew what AAA meant before he could finish reading his first, book for school assignment.
Yep.
He knew what a laminate was.
Yeah.
He knew side of stage. And he's like, Mama, I need one of those, please. Do I have one of those around my neck, Mama? And then he'd know where catering was. So... But it's wonderful now because he is working, he goes to a great school in LA. His education is incredible. He has a friend, one is a child actor who was reared on Nickelodeon. He's got 1.6 million followers. His other friend is a great cinematographer. My son's in varsity football, but then he spends the weekends and most sunrises and sunsets chasing a Malibu sunrise and sunset.
Wow.
They've made a short film, which they promptly told me. I happened to be in LA, thank God, and he said to me, Mum, we're going to make a movie. I said, all right, not just a small interstitial, maybe 10 or 12 minutes. No, we're making a short film. Okay. And how's that going to work, darling? Well, Tom, which is the actor who's been driving for 3.5 weeks, we're going to drive to Big Sur. Oh, right, darling. You're driving to Big Sur? Yes. How long's Tom been driving? 3 weeks. Okay. Well, how's that going to work, darling? Well, he'll have to drive in 1.5-hour shifts and then we'll have a break. I said, oh, and where are you going to stay? Well, we'll sleep in the back of the car. All right, so 3 16-year-olds from Pacific Palisades are going to sleep in the back of the car. For how many days, darling, are you away? 3, Mum. Okay. So, darling, the surfing culture. There's a lot of people that live by the sea a lot. I said, your cousins are surfers and, we know surfing culture. Yes, Mum. Well, some people live out of their vans the whole time there, and then there might be some homeless people. No, Mum, there's no homeless people at Big Sur. All right, are you tuned into a CCTV camera that I'm not familiar with? No, Mum, there's just no danger at all. All right. I said, well, I haven't met Tom. Well, we'll have a production meeting at the house. So the next day, Tom comes in. Well, of course, Tom's a studio child. He's 16. He's a young man. Of course, he could be a model. He's divine. He's got a second call back for a Reese Witherspoon movie.
Wow.
So Tom comes in. Unlike most other American children who are a little bit shy, Tom came straight over, looked me in the eye. Hello, Jen, nice to meet you. So we'll be downstairs in about an hour and a half. We're just putting the call sheet together for the 3 days. I looked, I thought, oh, here we go. I've met my match.
Oh, my God.
I said, would you like some water for your production meeting, Tom? No, we'll be back soon. So it's the best call sheet, Ange, I've ever seen in my life.
Really? Wow.
But in the end, I rang a friend of mine who's an Australian cinematographer. He has a great business downtown. And I said to him, mate, I'm not negotiating. Here's how it's going to be. $500 cash, 3 days, $1,500. You're with these 3 kids. I need a second camera and I need an EP. You're up making this film. Well, they're going to enter it in Sundance. There's no barriers to kids now, and I'm so grateful that these talented young men are out there chasing their goals. Because at 16, I had no idea. I was still on a BMX bike with my brother in the bush. I had no idea what was going on.
It is a different world out there now.
It's exciting.
It is really exciting. Anyone with a phone and a connection can pretty much, like, you're a media company. It's phenomenal what they can do. And look at how ambitious he is already. I wonder where he got that from.
We've met our match.
You must be so proud. Like, how great is that?
It's great. And he's been on set at The Voice, does, behind the scenes. Guy's very generous, and Delta as well.
Yeah.
They let Maxwell take behind the scenes photos. And I just think it's great that if we can impart, and you have this because you have an incredible company and staff, and you just have to share knowledge and you have to empower people. I remember being really scared in scenarios when I was working, but then equally so, some of my greatest mentors, Dennis Hanlon, who runs Sony, who's still a great mentor of mine. George Ash, everyone's different, but particularly Sony for me, we learnt so much because we embrace people's diversity. You and I are different, but we're the same.
Yeah.
And, that's a huge skill.
Yeah.
And I have, from my team, I really want to make sure they feel confident enough to just go for things.
Yeah.
Because what's the worst that can happen?
It's so true.
Can move on. There's no real mistake,
You just learn from it. You make a system so it doesn't happen again. Failure's okay. It's all right to make mistakes. That's good.
Of course.
You just become better and better and better at it as a company and as a team. Leadership is something that, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of talks out there. What is kind of like your top 3 things? Because you're a great leader. You get wonderful things and wonderful outcomes from people, and you challenge people a lot. And like you said before, like, you have wonderful, robust conversations. We've had them before.
Totally.
I've seen you have it with journalists before or with talent, but you do it in that very much, an iron fist and a velvet glove kind of way. And like, how do you lead a team, and how do you challenge them and get the best out of them? Like, is it back to that empowering thing?
I think it is empowering. I think at the end of the day, you have to lead with integrity. And I also have no problem getting my hands dirty. I really want to show people that I have a work ethic, and to simplify the pathway. At times things can be very confusing. I had a great mentor of mine who ran international at Warner Music, and she told me, Jen, take a learning from it, but also learn to let go. Put it in a box, tie it up with string, and throw it out the window when you have to at a certain point. And maybe that's helping people letting go of anxiety. I do have robust conversations because it is my job. I am a pathway person. So it comes down to having that integrity. I think I've changed my tone of voice over the years. How have I grown as a person? You have to be treated the way you'd like to be, and treat people the way you'd like to be treated. So I don't do very well with raised voices, never have. It makes me quite cower. So I feel you have to listen and try and be, in a very kind way, strong.
Yes.
And yes, you're right. I've had to speak to journalists or correct people if I can, but I don't think you need to embarrass anyone in what they're doing, because they're doing their best. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Do we really wake up wanting to hurt someone at the end of the day? I don't. No. I just love people. And And so some people are frustrating. You can't love everyone. It's not a peace out.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have to surround yourself with people that you want to learn from. And so for me, some very, very hard taskmasters learnt and took the time to explain to me why I might have done something incorrectly.
Yeah.
So the best I can do is help people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means leaving them alone, and sometimes that means grabbing them by the arm and helping them through their day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best. If people feel that they can tell me how they're really feeling, then I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Oh, you are doing more than okay. It's amazing. It's amazing to work with you. We work on a few projects together.
I love working with you.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And you really do push people to get the best out of them. And I see it with my team when you interact with Maddie or anyone from our team. And it's a real joy to watch. We've got quite a few people that will be tuning in that are thinking about starting a business as well. Do you have any tips for women that might be thinking about taking that leap of faith like you did, like I did, and, leaving a corporation or a company that feels kind of comfortable, they've been in it for a long time? What's kind of your tips of someone that might want to start their own thing?
Well, a business plan is something you need, but I don't know whether you have to have it, you definitely need a plan, and you need to know what you represent, because if you don't know what you're going to start out being, then you can't explain yourself to anyone. So you need to have, yes, there's going to be other PR companies if it's PR, but you really do need to know what's your point of difference, and who are you going to interface with. And it does help to possibly have your first client. I remember when I started my business, firstly, it's interesting, I have to ask you this, because I couldn't bear the thought of answering the phone and saying Jennifer Fontaine Publicity or whatever that was. I couldn't bear it. So I started a company by the name of Private Idaho. And people used to think, you love the B-52s. I'm like, I actually don't like them at all. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, not B-52s. They're like, well, why would you say Private Idaho? It was actually after the Gus Van Sant movie, My Own Private Idaho. Yeah. Because it was all about risk-taking. That movie was such an unabashedly different 100%. Movie at the time. And, River Phoenix, of course, and it was just massive. Yeah. And I thought that represented something different to me, because it was about taking a risk. I was about to take a massive risk. Oh, yeah. I wasn't working for anyone else. I was working for myself. Yeah. And I also felt that Private Idaho, the expression My Own Private Idaho, is about a sanctuary. And so if I was going to represent artists, I wanted them to feel safe. And my job is to protect artists, whether it was in PR or now in management, is I want them to feel that they're at their absolute prime so they can be the creatives. Yeah. And so I loved that. But I remember when I first started, and it was a home business, I didn't have an office, much like you. Yeah. And I had a telephone line, because you do need them, but you didn't. And so I sat on my first day, and of course it was perfect. Everything looked really good. And I had to ring myself. I had to make sure the phone actually rang. I love that. Shit.
Because you come from this hectic,
okay, well, let's just make sure Telstra at the time really had this line working.
That's hilarious.
And I do remember a lot of people said, I'll call you, and they didn't. Yeah. But it was, listen, this industry is full of false promises at the time too, So, but in the end, it worked out. It was bit by bit I got the jobs, and I was really lucky, because a lot of international artists like Michael Bublé and Chris Isaak, they all kept me on. Yeah. So I'm just thankful. It just came down to relationships.
It really does. And I remember my first job that I got when I started Flourish. And again,
what a name. What a good name this is.
It's a great name. It came to me in a dream, actually, Flourish, because Phil and I will often say, just go and flourish and prosper, and it's such a lovely way of putting how we work with our clients. But it was the strangest thing, picking up the phone and saying, I'm Angela from Flourish. It's you lose a lot of your identity in that first year, and you kind of need to build that up again.
You've never lost your identity. You're Angela Ceberano. You're a force. But anyway.
It's very kind. But I remember my first gig was with Michael Bolton. I did the Michael Bolton tour, which I thought was...
I did a Michael Bolton tour.
You?
I did it back when it was Time, Love and Tenderness, which probably wouldn't do too well in the Me Too scenario now, because we had one model called Time, the other one was Love and Tenderness.
Oh my gosh. Different times. Right, we've moved on from since then.
We've moved on from there. then.
100%. Jen, I could literally talk to you for the next hour, but I'm conscious that you have a business to run. I have a business to run, and appointments.
The inbox.
Oh, the inbox. I know it's already starting to make me feel a little bit anxious, but that's okay. Thank you so much for all your sharing with us and all your wisdom. I know that my listeners are going to get so much out of this. So, yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been an honour. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.